Hi guys, welcome back to Too Cool for Middle School. I have officially been doing restorative circles for about a semester now. So our semester ended at Christmas break and I'm on Christmas break right now, which is lovely. So I thought I would sit down right now and just talk to you about how I do restorative circles. A couple months ago, I went to a restorative practices training. This is one of the handbooks that I got, the Restorative Practices Handbook for Teachers, Disciplinarians, and Administrators, Building a Culture of Community in Schools. And I really appreciated that training. Like, it was 2 days that I had to be out of the classroom and I was not mad about it. I did one video about the discipline window, I think. So that's up on my channel like a couple videos back. And it was funny because a few teachers from Australia and New Zealand commented and they were like, yeah, we've been doing this for a long time. Like, everyone in our district does this. Like, this is new to you? And our trainer had mentioned that this came from Australia, and if I'm not mistaken, it was kind of an idea from like the Aboriginal people, and the educators and even like law enforcement there noticed that their kids never reoffended. Like, if they got in trouble, they didn't reoffend, and they kind of wanted to learn about like why, how do you keep your kids like in check? And their answer was that they have these community circles. Like, they build community in circles, and then they kind of deal with issues in circles. And it's kind of an ancient idea, you know. We all sat around campfires and that's how we got to know each other, and then if there was an issue, that's how you would resolve it. So it's kind of like bringing that idea into your classroom. And one of the biggest questions that us educators asked during this training was like the specifics, like, okay, how do you set up the chairs? How long does this take? Where do you do this? And so I thought I would just go over those types of things with you, because our trainer didn't really answer those questions. She was just kind of like, well, you just figure it out for yourself. But we wanted like an example, like, okay, we will figure it out for ourselves, but for example, how would you do this? So for example, in my class, every Wednesday we do restorative circles. And again, I've got 6th graders. And so part of this whole like restorative practices thing is that you can be very high control as long as you are also high support. And so I give them high support, but I keep control of this process. So it's 20 minutes in the middle of the period, which is one thing that our trainer suggested, so that it's not like at the beginning and then kids can kind of like drag it out, and then it's not at the end where they can kind of like drag their feet and make it less time. Like, you have control over it, and you do instruction for the beginning of the period, and then you do your restorative circle, and then you go back to instruction. So it just kind of works its way into your instruction. It's not even really like this special time. It's just something that we do. This is part of our class. And they're very excited when they come in on Wednesdays. They're like, are we doing restorative circles today? And they're so excited. And so I'm like, yep, but first, we gotta do this worksheet or whatever. So when the time comes, I have control of the process. I make everybody put everything away. They put everything on their table, and we do not go on to the next step until every single person has done that. Like, their Chromebooks need to be closed, their backpacks need to be on the tables, everything's got to be taken care of. Then our next step is everyone picks up their chair, and there's one correct way to pick up your chair. It needs to be right in front of you, not behind, not over your head, not like with the legs sticking out. There's one way to do it. And so I have them pick up their chairs in the correct way, move the chairs out of the way, so they put them to the sides. Then we push the tables to the sides, and this group does their table, and then they all have to get out of the way before the next group can go. And this sounds like really strict and really high control, but otherwise it's chaos. And like, for me, I wouldn't want to do restorative circles if it was gonna like just stress me the heck out and like make my day horrible. So now they're pretty good at it. It took several weeks, and I have one class, like my Read 180 class, where the kids are just less mature. They are. And so actually I don't let them do this process anymore. The class that comes before them, we actually, I did have to adjust it eventually. So they actually do their restorative circle at the end of the period so that they can leave it set up for my next group. Because that was just, they proved themselves over and over that they weren't mature enough to handle it. So you kind of have to judge those things for yourself. So anyway, they push the tables out of the way. Then once that is done, they're allowed to go grab their chair and move it into the middle, and we make a circle. This doesn't really work with like desks that are attached to a chair, because they're gonna need to like get up out of their chairs pretty often. So some teachers at our school, since like their classroom is just not going to work for this, and they're not really willing to disrupt their whole classroom setup once a week, they go to the library and do it in the library. And some people just do it once a month. Some people just do it when we have minimum days, but I just wanted to try doing it the way that we were taught and doing it once a week for 20 minutes. So once we're in our circle, we always start off with a little game, and either we play The Wind Blows or I'm Like People Who. So if I feel like I need a little more control of the group that day, then I'll sit in a chair and I'll say something like, the wind blows if you're wearing black shoes. And then everybody that's wearing black shoes gets up and they have to find a new chair. So this helps kind of break up the little cliques in your class, and it helps people see like who they have things in common with. So it's a game, but it's also like part of that restorative practice of, helping kids see what they have in common. Maybe I'll say something like, the wind blows if you're the oldest in your family. The wind blows if you have seen Moana. The wind blows if science is your favorite subject. So if you're kind of having a rough day and you're not ready to like think of all those things, then you could switch, and I get rid of one chair and I stand in the middle, and I do I'm Like People Who. And so then the kids have to like think of the question. So I would say something like, I'm like people who have sisters. And then anybody that does would get up and we all find a new seat, and then there's a new person in the center. And then they usually say something like, I'm like people who play video games for 4 hours a night or whatever. And then people get up and they switch seats. Or I'm like people who are getting hot lunch today or whatever. And so then people can see what they have in common, and also kind of just gets them moving, kind of gets their wiggles out. And the good thing about the wind blows, when you have a little more control over it, is that like, there are people that shouldn't be sitting next to each other during this process. And so if you see that they are, you can say, okay, like this kid is wearing a red shirt, and be like, the wind blows if you're wearing a red shirt. And even if you're not, just stand up and go fill that kid's seat, so that you know that those two kids aren't sitting next to each other. So without like calling them out and being like, oh no, you two should not be sitting next to each other, you can kind of take care of that in a fun way. So we always start with that. Then, I never really tell them like, this is the last round. I just either like put the chair back in, or I just don't do any more wind blows. I'm like, okay, now we're gonna start our questions. And we usually have time for about 3 questions. And so you can do a thing where you just kind of like popcorn, like people just give responses out of order, but I like to do it in order in our circle, so that everybody gets a chance to talk and that everybody has a chance to listen. One thing we also did before we started restorative circles was we established class norms and like the procedures that we wanted to have, like the expectations for the circle. I don't let kids do this at the beginning of the year. I don't let kids set the classroom rules. I know people say that there's like more buy-in and stuff, but no, this is my classroom and I will tell you the rules. But the circle is not mine. The circle is the whole classes. So they came up with things, like no side conversations. We have this thing called the date face that I always talk about, like, when we're doing little like turn and talk stuff, like look at your friend with a date face and be like, and we practice, like one day you'll be on a date with somebody and they might be talking about something really boring, but you like them. So you're going to be like, oh yes, that is so interesting. The tires you got for your truck. Okay. Anyway, so we practice our date face. And so we just try and be respectful of the people who are talking. And we are meeting the Common Core standards with our speaking and listening skills by doing restorative circles. So if parents ask or administrators ask, you can also say, hey, this is a great way to incorporate the speaking and listening skills that are sometimes hard to work into your lessons. So you need to have a talking piece. I have a little Leonardo, like Ninja Turtle. It's just like this round thing, like a little Beanie Baby. What are those Beanie Babies that are like circles? I don't know. It's that. So I just had it in my classroom. I don't even know where it came from. So we pass that around, and you can only talk if you have Leonardo, and they're very protective of Leonardo. If anyone drops him, they're like, oh no, and they pick him up and they're like, are you okay? So they like Leonardo. I would suggest not having anything too small In our staff meetings, actually, we've been doing restorative circles too, and we started with this like little teeny beanbag thing, and it was just like too small and annoying. And then if you do ever want to like throw it to different people, a small thing just doesn't work. So you need it to be like this big is pretty good. And so I always come up with my questions ahead of time so that it's not like, sometimes they are about our curriculum. And so we have been doing Bud Not Buddy and like words to live by. And so, you know, last week I think we did like, what are your words to live by? And actually like they were getting ready to do a little speech like later on in the week or the following week maybe. And so this was like a little practice run, like give us a preview, like just like a 10-second preview. What is your speech going to be about? And then that kind of like just helped loosen them up a little bit for their presentations later. With some questions, I'll give them like partner time to like turn and talk and think about their answer. And anytime I do that, I take the 45 seconds and I go around and say, you two are partners, you two are partners, you two are partners, you two are partners. Because otherwise somebody gets left out, it ends up a little crazy. So you just tell them who their partners are and they have a little turn and talk time. I just kind of ask things like, you know, what are you going to do over Christmas break? And everybody gets to go around and say that. It's nice to have sentence starters, especially with my Read 180 class, kids who are a lot of them are ELD 3s and they're still learning English and they appreciate the sentence starters. And so you can tell them like, you're going to start your answer like this. Over Christmas break, I plan to, and whatever. You can get kind of creative with your questions. Once I asked them, are you more like your mom or your dad? And that was a really like eye-opening question, and a lot of them gave me some insight into their family life. And you know, some would say like, well, I'm organized like my mom, but I'm grumpy like my dad, or something like that. So that was kind of an interesting one. Another thing that I did was I just set up a Google question like on our Google Classroom, and they could offer suggestions for questions in our restorative circles. And so some of them were like, you know, we want to go around and say our favorite YouTubers or our favorite video game or our like morning routine. I thought that was funny. Or like what we do after school, or like if you could be any animal, what would you want to be? And so I usually take one from their suggestions, and then like the person that suggested that feels really cool, and then I have one that's, you know, to give me a little more insight into them, and then one that is kind of related to our curriculum. Another thing that went really well last week was, so my students, after we read Bud Not Buddy and a speech by Obama and a speech by Steve Jobs that all kind of had to do with like advice, like words to live by, they came up with their own words to live by and did a 1-minute speech. And so that took like 3 days to go through their speeches. But then on the last day, it was a Wednesday, and we were going to do restorative circles. So after everybody had gone, I had them go up, and they love writing on the whiteboard, you know, like any chance to write on the whiteboard, they are really excited. And so they wrote their little quote and their name next to it so that we could remember what everybody's quote was. And then we did our restorative circle, and I said, besides your own, which quote was the most inspiring to you and why? And that just made kids feel so good, because every single answer somebody was choosing, you know, to like highlight what somebody else had said. And so the kids whose quotes got chosen like were just felt so good. Another good question that we did once was, what is something you really don't like when people say to you? And so we got to go around, you know, some kids are like, I don't like it when people say I'm fat, or I don't like it when people say I'm stupid, or I don't like when people joke around about whatever. And so that it takes a little while to like work up to a question like that. But then the next round we did, what is something that you love hearing? Like, what's a compliment that you really like to get? And you know, some kids said like, I really like when people say that I'm kind, or people say that I'm funny, or I like when people say I'm a good basketball player, or whatever. And so then you kind of do have to guide them a little bit. Like at the end of that, I told them, you just got some power from your classmates. They just gave you power when they told you what makes them, like what hurts their feelings, and then what makes them feel really good. And your words can be powerful. So use that information wisely. And I hope that you choose to build other people up and tell them things that make them feel good, and that you don't use the things that you know can hurt them. So it really does like build your class culture and help kids to build relationships with each other. It helps you to get to know them. My students are a little more reserved, like just culturally. They don't like lay it all out on the table. So I learn a lot from restorative circles about them and about their home lives and like what they're into and just stuff I wouldn't always get. And it's only 20 minutes a week, you know, like that. I think it helps me avoid like other issues and other behavior problems too, because I'm genuinely interested in what they have to say. So then when we do have like a behavior issue, there's a little bit of trust there. And the last thing that I would say is that, well, two more things. Okay. So when you first start restorative circles, they're going to be like super excited about it. They think it's really cool. It's so novel. After you do it for a little while, they're going to start like kind of thinking it's lame, and then it's going to like become normal in your classroom, and it kind of goes back up. So there's going to be a little dip a couple weeks or maybe a month or two into it where they're kind of like, oh, we're doing restorative circles again. Oh. But fight through that and it'll become a little more normalized. The other thing that kind of goes with that is that, especially, you know, I have 6th graders, and some of them are not going to take it seriously and they're going to joke no matter what. And so the cool thing about restorative circles is we always say like no one can respond, because if you have the Leonardo, you're the only one talking. Nobody can respond to what you say. So you can say something kind of stupid, you can say something really deep, and no one is allowed to respond to you. So there's going to be kids that say something really stupid like, I like when people say I fart good. And then everyone just kind of looks at them like, and you go to the next person and there's no reaction. I'm just like, and you go on to the next. And like maybe their one friend that you split up across the circle kind of like laughs, but they end up feeling kind of stupid when they give stupid answers, because we don't feed into it. Like you just let them say dumb stuff and then like there's no reward really. And then there are still going to be a few kids that, like, I have probably 2 boys in every class that still say something stupid every time, and probably 2 girls in every class that refuse to speak up. Like they are so quiet, you can hardly hear what they're saying. And every time I just keep asking them, oh, we couldn't hear you, we want to hear your response, can you say that again? And you just keep asking them to speak up. And then with the kids that aren't taking it seriously, they get 1 shot. And then if they say something really dumb, like, oh, I like to fart, I'm just like, all right, go ahead and scoot your chair back. And so they scoot their chair back from the circle. They can watch, but they can't participate. And then if they still are like distracting people back there, then they leave the room. So you might have to set that up with like another teacher or administrator or something, like know that during this time I might send you somebody, and you can probably tell them like, and it's probably gonna be Mike or whatever. They might have to leave. And don't make a big deal out of it. Just say, you know, okay, you're going to be scooting back, and then the next time, like, seems like this is not your day for restorative circles. I'm going to have you go wait out the rest of this in so-and-so's classroom or whatever. So again, you don't feed the negative behavior. You're just kind of like, well, you don't get to be in this, because it's about respect. And there are a few kids that I've just had to talk to, like before we do the circle, where I'll just say, okay, for the past couple weeks, you haven't been all that respectful to the other people in your class, and this whole process is about respect. So if you can't give your respect, then we're not going to have you participate in this. You know, it's not really like a punishment consequence, like you're not getting detention or anything. I mean, I don't really tell them this, but you know, it's not like a detention thing. It's just you're not going to participate because that's not what we do here. So you won't do it. And that's like really in line with the way that I like to do discipline anyway. So it works well for me. And then if somebody says something kind of like deep and like, you know, I'll ask them like, on a scale of 1 to 5, how's your day going? And then you can tell us why if you choose. And somebody might say like, well, my day is a 1 because, you know, my parents are getting a divorce and it's really rough on me. Still no one responds. You're like, okay, and they move on. But you can go to that kid afterward and kind of check in with them. But in the middle of the circle, it's just, it's kind of nice to just be able to say whatever you want without a ton of reaction. So I think the kids like that. The last thing is that they can pass, but you come back to them. So if you know, say, what is the best book that you've read lately? And you know, we're going around and then some kid just kind of freezes and they can't think of the name of their book. They can say pass, but they have to remember by the time we come to the end of the circle, then we'll go back to the people who passed. And you know, they can always just like repeat a book that somebody else said or whatever, but they need to participate. And like with the games and with the responses, like there's really no rules. Like it's whatever you want. So, you know, my kids are very like, wait, am I doing it right? They kind of question everything. So I say like, okay, if you're wearing red, the wind blows. And they're like, well, does it count if it's like the letters under? And I'm like, it's for you, whatever you think. Like I don't let them ask questions anymore because that was kind of like a downfall, like that ruins the spontaneity of it. And so now, like before we even start, it's just like, there are no questions. Just if you think you would stand up for this, stand up and go. So it's been a cool thing in my class this year. I hope that was kind of helpful for you if you have done restorative circles in the past and you have some good ideas for maybe like questions for the games at the beginning, or questions for going around the circle, or any other techniques that you do. I know a lot of you educators from New Zealand and Australia are like experts in this, and I'm quite a newbie. So definitely leave any suggestions that you have below. And if you try this out in your classroom, let me know how it goes. I'd be interested to see how it works with like different age levels. 6th grade I think is a pretty sweet spot for this. Like they are getting a little bit self-conscious, but they're still kind of open enough to participate without getting too closed off, and they're like mature enough to kind of take it seriously. So I feel like this is a pretty good age, but let me know if you do this with like younger kids or high school aged kids and how that works for you. So anyway, I hope you're having a great day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.